Hi, Professor Graves. Today you're going to hear my week 6 reflection of our class. This is something that I sometimes do with my class, so I thought that maybe I'd try that. So this is what I learned in week 6 with content. We started out talking about case studies, and when I first heard that, I thought, I don't know anything about a case study. And I looked it up on the internet, and I was like, a case study? And it was all these papers and everything, you know. But then I started doing our assignment about the salmon, and I learned how a case study could be applied to my classroom. So basically what I learned and experienced was that it is just a series of clues and also questions. And I thought that the questions were really important when I was going through it myself, because they really made me stop and think at every step, and so I had an idea going into the next set of papers. And usually it explains a phenomenon. So, like in the case of the salmon, why were they depleting? That was really interesting to me because, I actually was taking the invasive species class, and so I thought, well, why do we care about this when they're non-native? But it was very complicated, as are most invasive species. And I thought about a phenomenon that my class talks about, because we have to talk about adaptations, and my one thing we talk about is whales and why they're mammals and how scientists have figured that out. And so I thought, and I posted that on the discussion board, that might be something. And I heard lots of other ideas that were great on there that I could maybe use in my classroom. So I think that this week I've learned a lot from the discussion board and participated with several students. So I think that would deserve a 5. There's also great things. There are lots of applications for this, right? I saw a lot of different ones on the discussion board, but I did see a lot of ones that were about plants and animals, and I think that there's many above and beyond that once you get comfortable with creating them, and I think that they do need to be created by the teacher, because those are what the teacher knows what grade level reading is appropriate and what type of questions they're after. So there are lots of applications, and I'm excited to start looking into making those in my own classroom. And this leads nicely into the next question, which is about science and engineering practices and why science teachers would want to use this in their classroom. So I thought I'd add a little science teacher right here who would be using this in their classroom for science and engineering practices. And these are some science and engineering practices that I definitely want to boost in my classroom. Oh man, I'm having a hard time with the chalkboard here. Okay. So these science and engineering practices, in my classroom, when I do this, I have the students repeat it to me. So I talk while I'm doing it, but I don't have to, I get a little bit of break to think while they're repeating it to me to boost their language skills. So science and engineering practices, I thought that this really helps with constructing explanation. So they need to explain why they think that. And that's something that I'm working on all the time with my students, but anything more that can help with that, I am very grateful for. The other thing is engaging in argument. So students need to not only defend their theory of why they think the salmon their populations are decreasing, but they need to say why. What evidence from the what evidence from the case study has helped them with that. So those are the big ones that I saw. It can hit many more, but those were the large ones. The next thing that I saw, or the next thing I worked on this week, was my inquiry project. So I was the one that did I gotta make sure you can see the marble. So here's my zip line, just drawing a little picture for you really quick. Here's my zip line. And I kind of played around with lots of different things with my cup. I thought that I was gonna have a hard time getting the marble to drop at all, but getting the marble to not drop, but it turned out that the marble was just oh wait, let's see. I had a hard time getting the marble to come out at all. So then I cut too big of a hole, and I had to go back and forth, and I could really see how students would get fatigued. And so I kind of thought, well, I shouldn't do inquiry in my classroom longer. There should be maybe like a time period, and then after that they need to wait and come back to it after a little while, because otherwise it does get a little bit fatiguing. So this is what I would want students to do, is get the right in between for the bullseye. The other thing that I've worked on this week, other than getting a good design, is I have started working on my presentation, because that is coming up before we know it, and it is actually a lot of stuff. And some of the things I didn't really anticipate when I picked the marble drop was the misconception, and tying that into it. And so this is like my presentation that I'm creating, and I've gotten that all set up. I just need to fill it in with the different things, which I didn't create a misconception. I did, I'm not really sure how I'm gonna tie that into the marble drop yet. So that's something that I'm starting to think about, as well as the conceptual change model. So those are things that I am working on, so that I am ready to turn in my last inquiry project next week, and hopefully be complete with the class. So I hope you enjoyed this. I really like doing this with my students, and they do say, "Miss Eichner, you have it written on there," and I'm like, "I know, but you're fine. You're still seeing it written right in front of you." And then afterwards, I have a great visual for them to refer to, and we actually go back and highlight important information as the week goes on. So I hope you enjoyed my week 6 reflection. Thank you.